Welcome to the Company of Dads podcast, where we explore the sweet, silly, strange, and sublime aspects of being a lead dad in a world where men, who are the go-to parent, aren't always accepted at work, among their friends, or in the community for what they're doing. I'm your host, Paul Sullivan. Our podcast is just one of the many things we produce each week at the Company of Dads. We have various features, including the Lead Dad of the Week. We have our community, both online and also with in-person events. We have a new resource library for all fathers. The one-stop shop for all of this is our newsletter, The Dad. So sign up at thecompanyofdads.com/The Dad. Today, my guest is Deanne Aussem, the Wellbeing leader at professional services firm PwC. She's been at the firm in a variety of roles for 20 plus years. Her current role is described as, quote, driving strategy, innovation, and an overall positive workplace culture that supports work-life integration, prioritizes holistic well-being to sustain a happy, engaged, and thriving community of solvers at PwC. Based in Los Angeles, Deanne is the mother of two, a son who is 12 and a half years old, and a daughter, 11. She's married to an Australian woman named Jody, who runs her own business focused on turning old wetsuits into jewelry, which is very cool. Welcome, Deanne, to the Company of Dads podcast.
Well, thank you, Paul. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here with you.
All right, I don't want to put you on the spot with the first question here, but I am. I've seen some photos of you out there. Is it true that you have a bulldog as your family pet?
It is true. In fact, it is. He is one of 5 pets in the house. We are big animal lovers here, but he's a very special guy. If you know bulldogs, they have quite the personality. So he is always into something, but providing nonstop laugh, love, and memories for sure.
Well, I know he's not here on this podcast because if he was, I would hear him snoring because we know the bulldog, they just snore, don't they?
They snore. They make a variety of noises, Paul, that are sometimes unwelcome, sometimes welcome. So you never know what you're going to get, which is exactly why he is in the other room while we're having this conversation today.
I love it. What's a day or even a week like in the life of PwC's Wellbeing leader?
Oof, wow. Well, that's a good question to start off with. No day, no week is really ever the same. I would say there's a lot of variety. One thing that does remain consistent is my ability to connect with our people. I spend a lot of time talking with our people to understand what a day in their life is like and what support and resources would be helpful for them to be able to be their best and thrive, as you introed, so that we can be the best whole community of solvers that we possibly can be for our clients, for our teammates, and for ourselves. So I get to do a lot of really cool things. I think I do have probably the best job, really focused in on well-being and making sure that we have a healthy, positive culture where our people, again, can thrive and really be taken care of. Care is one of our values that we take really seriously. So I'm honored and privileged to be able to serve in this role.
Yeah, but if there's one thing I know about humans, I spent 25 years as a journalist, most of that at the New York Times, is that people don't often write a letter to say, hey, that was wonderful. Thanks for doing that for me. Maybe they do at PwC. But in general, when you think about, the top 3 things that you hear day after day or week after week that people are, I'm not saying people are complaining at PwC, yeah, but it's something that they're concerned about and they would like your help with. They would like you to help them solve that problem so that they can be problem solvers for other people. What are, a couple of those things that really stand out to you today?
Yeah, great. Thank you for asking that. A variety of different things, of course, but if I had to really boil that down into a few key themes, and again, we've recently, about a year ago, launched our My Plus strategy, which is focused on doubling down on supporting our people. It's our people strategy. We do a lot of listening, and we have a lot of really great tools to be able to listen to our people. So that's one thing that we provide, that forum, that format to be able to collect input so that, again, we can act with intention to provide what it is our people need. So I don't know that it's unique to PwC, because this is a theme that I hear in my personal communities, fellow parents with children my age or older, younger. I think time remains that precious resource that people don't feel like they have enough of. And so I heard a really interesting quote that helped me reframe my own way of thinking about time. And it's a shift away from prioritizing my time. So you may have heard of this or say it yourself, Paul. I need to prioritize my time better. It's not actually about that. It's about making time for your priorities. And I'm pretty sure that's a Stephen Covey quote, but how we make time for our priorities is by understanding what we value and what we want to prioritize. And so that's one thing that, as I hear that from our people at work, as we're thinking about making work for people's lives and how we really achieve that type of integration, how do we make time for our priorities, and how do we better understand what we value, what our values are, so that we can be putting our time into those places and understanding, like, what type of gap do I have? If I say my family is really important, but I'm not devoting the majority of my time, energy, etc., to them, then I have a gap. And in our world at PwC, we love data. We love to measure things and analyze and gain those insights. So whenever we can turn this into an activity or an exercise that people feel like they can recognize, acknowledge, and then put a plan around to make some measurable progress against. So the time comment is definitely one that I hear a lot. And then another thing is really just better understanding the support that is actually available. So we have a variety of tremendous resources that we offer to our people. What we're working on in a very tech-enabled, AI-driven way is how we organize that information and make it even more accessible, because a benefit's only a benefit if people actually take advantage of it and it's helpful for them.
Sure.
So that's another thing I hear is, how can you help me make sense of all that we have available to better understand what I can use and when, so that, again, that provides that comfort of support.
Yeah, the first comment you made about time is essential. And some of the senior leaders that I've talked to who've made a difference at their firms have really been public about their calendars.
Yes.
And they put on their calendars spending time with my son. There's a story I've told a million times, but a fella based on the West Coast, partner, CMO, works for a firm largely center of gravity on the East Coast. And he put in his calendar that he was going to spend an hour and a half each day getting his son ready for school, 7 to 8:30. Not a big deal if you're on the East Coast, because that's where the majority of people were. Big deal for him because people thought that he should be, ready to go. You're on the West Coast too, obviously, but it made a difference for him as a person. So that was important. But what he found over a month is that it made a huge difference for the people who reported up to him. He was a partner. Nothing was going to happen to him. Nobody's going to fire him. They would work around him. But he was leading by an example that allowed, he was a dad, but both, moms and dads, to feel that they could do a similar thing. In your role, in well-being, it's one thing if you have, I don't know, 20 somethings, 30 somethings coming to you and saying, hey, Deanne, this is what we want to do. Do you have this research? Yes. But what do you do if they say, well, is my manager really modeling that? Or how do you encourage those managers to model, those people in their 40s, 50s, maybe 60s who are established, who got there in a different regime, got there in a different way where well-being wasn't something we talked about? How do you encourage them to model for their younger employees?
Yeah, you hit that nail right on the head, Paul, because role modeling the values that we talk about and espouse is critical. It's one of the many foundations of great leadership. And it's something that, again, at PwC, we strongly advocate for. We do have well-being team plans that our teams, having the tools available to take an assessment. So when we talk about well-being, we're talking about it very holistically. Of course, it's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, financial, and social. And so everything that we embed in the conversation revolves around those 6 different dimensions. And so when we provide that type of a framework, it gives people a language to say, I took this assessment. I'm a little deficient in my emotional dimension. Here are some habits. We provide a habit bank that people can make withdrawals from or deposits into. of those effective habits that might help them strengthen whatever dimension of well-being they're looking for support around. We take that a step further because well-being is not a one-size-fits-all. It's very personal and individualized, but we also do want to make it a team activity. So with these team well-being plans, what we're trying to encourage is this value of community coming together. So I can have my own personal set of goals and habits, but as a team operating and working together, what is it that we want to prioritize when it comes to taking care of ourselves and our well-being moving forward? So I would say that very visible, making space for that conversation, incorporating this as part of just how we plan to do our work together has been a huge advantage. We also have talked about well-being as a leadership skill. We expect our leaders to be proficient when it comes to well-being. That shifted the conversation. And this is not a new conversation for us, by the way, Paul. It's something we've been talking about for well over a decade. Has it evolved and morphed and changed? Of course,
Sure.
as you would expect. It ebbs and flows with other specific factors and needs and whatnot. But the visible role model in leadership, and I'll just tell you a quick story because I love the calendar experiment. It's something I've done, putting protected time on the calendar, knowing when I'm my best and when I also want to make it very public. When I am chaperoning a field trip, or if I have to decline a meeting invite because it conflicts with me chaperoning a field trip, I'm very vocal and transparent into why I'm saying no to help people understand why I'm setting the boundaries that I'm setting. And I've gotten such positive feedback from others who have really seen that as a visible sign of permission for them to also speak up and activate their voice to talk about what's important for them when it comes to life outside of work or setting those boundaries. So we can't underestimate the power and the value that comes from our own example. And sometimes it's a courageous act, and sometimes it's maybe something we don't think much of, but having that visible leadership supporting the values and role modeling our own well-being is really important.
Do you think that would have been, I mean, did you do that in 2019? Or is this something that, you and the firm feels more comfortable doing in the post-COVID world? And I ask that because, the OOO was ubiquitous, pre-COVID. Then we all figured out that we could work from home. And then it's, that honesty, we talk a lot about this company, that honesty matters so much. You're not just out of the office. You're out of the office because you're chaperoning a field trip and you're doing it from X hour to Y hour, and then you'll be available afterwards, or you'll deal with it tomorrow. Would you have felt as comfortable doing that pre-COVID as you're feeling now?
I say absolutely. Again, this notion of flexibility.
How about a firm as a whole though? Like, okay, I guess the well-being officer should feel comfortable doing that, but like the firm as a whole, have you noticed a difference in people giving themselves permission to be honest with what they're doing beyond work, pre-COVID versus post-COVID?
I mean, I really think that our well-being journey, as we talk about it today, stretches back into how we were talking about flexibility back in, say, 2010. And so really at that point, looking at what is work? Work is not a place that we go to necessarily, but it's something that we do. So working flexibly really has always been a part of our culture, something that is ingrained rather than earned. And our people do appreciate being able to choose where and when they work. And we will continue to prioritize, just as we have done over the last 13-ish years, when we officially or formally started that flexibility journey. But we're going to continue to prioritize that through inclusive hybrid work culture that we are offering today. And again, a variety of flexible arrangements. So that's where I think we're talking about it now, of course, in a post-COVID world where what does the office even mean? We didn't go to an office for quite a while. Now we have a return to office priority, again, really with the intention of getting us back together. We have folks who started at PwC during the pandemic who maybe still haven't gone into an office. So we want to build that community, bringing that social aspect of our well-being strategy to life to make sure we are staying connected, because full well as human beings, we are wired for connectivity. I mean, we are social creatures. So I actually, just to give you my own personal example, I don't set an out of office, so to speak, even if that's how the technology labels it, when I'm going to be away from work. That's what I say. I am away from work right now.
Okay.
I'm not out of the office. I am away from work doing this. I'll be out from this time to this time. And here's when you can expect to get a response from me. So having that clear communication too, you don't want to leave anybody hanging. It's okay. You're away from work,
Right.
but when am I going to be able to get an answer? So it's that holistic way of framing and communicating that I think is really important. And people understand. People understand
Yeah.
that
They
they
respect it.
respect it.
It's kind of like those old signs that would hang on delis, back in 10 minutes. Well, I don't even know what that means. Like, when did you leave? How do I know what 10 minutes is? Like, out of office is like, I'm away from work
Yeah,
until,
that's
I want to pivot and focus a little bit on the Parenting Inclusion
yes.
Network. At the company as we focus on fathers, and we advocate for more support of fathers at work, be that in,
Yes.
parenting groups together with all parents, or on their own, feeling that they can take, parental leave and not be penalized for it. And obviously, we do this because it's good for dads, but we also know that it's really good for working moms as well, because it removes the stigma that all caregiving is gonna fall on women. We're humans. We're talking about humans,
Yeah.
and parenting is a human thing. What are some of PwC's policies focused on, or specifically for working dads
Yeah.
at the firm?
Yeah. I love this. Thank you for asking that question. Let me start, Paul, with maybe taking a step back, because we at PwC have 11 inclusion networks made up of over 20,000 of our people who share common backgrounds or life experiences or interests. So these are open to everybody, members of a specific affinity, allies, someone who's interested in learning more, or really just a general supporter. So our Parenting Inclusion Network, which is the one I specifically want to talk about given your question, that launched nationally in 2018. So we did have local chapters established prior to 2008, but now with that formal launch, we've got about 3,500 plus members across the US. So that network really provides support, resources, community for working parents so that we can connect and achieve that work-life integration. That's in addition to these formal benefits that I'll speak about in just a moment. But we do a lot of things like that, again, to create community, because we are completely committed to supporting parents through all phases of caregiving, regardless of gender identity. There's a reason we talk about paid parental leave instead of maternity leave, or because we know today, especially, families are comprised of a variety of different scenarios. And so our parental leave really is available for anyone who is a new parent through birth, surrogacy, adoption placement, foster placement, again, regardless of gender. And one thing you might find interesting, Paul, is in 2022, what we noticed, again, remember I said we love data, we love to measure and count things. There was nearly a 50-50 split between fathers and mothers who took advantage of PwC's parental leave benefit. So how much time do we give our folks? We recently expanded that leave for all parents from 8 to 12 weeks. So now, again, everyone gets 12 weeks to allow for additional bonding time with a newborn, or again, a newly adopted or foster care child. So one other thing that I'll mention, and then as you can tell, I'm pretty excited about all this, is what I think is a really special benefit. When our people are returning to work, so after their 12-week parental leave, PwC also offers an additional 4 weeks of what we would call a phased return to work, which allows returning parents to work a reduced schedule, say 60% of a 40-hour work week or 24 hours, but we pay them their regular base pay. So during that transition period, parents don't have to worry about a reduced compensation, and it's extra time, again, to on-ramp back into working after that paid parental leave.
You're obviously preaching to the converted here, and I get what you're saying, but I just had a call before our call with a very senior person in financial services who took the opposite view. Like, if we give people this much time off, how are they going to earn the money and this? But obviously, it's working for PwC. When you think about it, we're talking about very important things, critical things. Everybody should have the opportunity to have parental leave. But what is the business reason for PwC to have such a robust and open and generous, well-being plan?
Yeah, our people and our clients, who are also people, are the heartbeat of our business. And I would say we understand the value of hard work. I mean, people don't choose the professional service environment without expecting to work really hard. And we also understand that there is this notion of human sustainability, of which well-being is obviously foundational. And so when we can create these spaces for people to bring their whole selves to work, activate their voice and ask for what they want, set those boundaries and be very realistic, also work hard and understand the demands of delivering exceptional service. All of that really matters. And again, creates this culture of care and belonging that we are really striving to create. One other thing, just to give you another example, and again, I mentioned a little bit before of our My Plus strategy, which again, we believe is a brand defining people experience. We're trying to rethink the work experience in our profession to continually attract, retain, and develop leading talent in the industry to serve our clients, fuel our growth, and really set a new standard for the business community. So just as we are relentlessly client-focused, we are unwavering in our ongoing investment in our people. As I said, our people are the heartbeat of our firm. That's never going to change. And when we do things like offer these amazing benefits or value protected time together, another thing that we do twice a year is a firm-wide shutdown. So different from vacation, which again, we have a very generous vacation policy. In July and in December, we have a full week where we take that time off together. And that's a very different feeling. People just come back feeling refreshed, renewed, re-energized from that type of a reset. And then that translates into amazing productivity and excellence in deliverables and superior relationships with our clients. There's a direct tie to taking care of ourselves and being well into our business strategy and priority. And we've really valued that. Our most senior level leadership has valued that for a very long time. And it's just become something that is threaded through the fabric of our culture at PwC.
But to tell the truth, Deanne, there has to be one employee, there has to be some Bob out there that you're sending an email to, like, Bob, stop emailing people. The firm has been shut down. Stop it. Of course. I've told you this before.
You're going to find, whether it's Bob or Jack or Betty, I mean, it could be anybody, right? You're always going to have folks who maybe aren't as far along on the journey. But here's what I will tell you. When we just did our July 2023 firm shutdown, we, of course, send a survey. We ask for feedback and input. We sent a survey that over 20,000 PwCers completed. Again, after that shutdown time, we wanted to understand if their time away was protected or interrupted. If it was interrupted, we wanted to understand why. Was it self-imposed? Did somebody reach out and ask? Did Bob contact you and ask you for something during that time? And of those 20,000 plus respondents, 93% said their time off was uninterrupted and protected. 93%.
That's impressive. That is
impressive. Yeah. So to answer your question directly, will we always have those who, and again, we are a client service business. We will have some client needs that must go on during that shutdown period. And then we try to, again, put something else in place for those that, if they didn't take full advantage of the shutdown, how can we provide them with that protected time at a later point? So again, we have to be flexible. We have to compromise. But for 93% of our respondents to say their time off was uninterrupted and protected is a pretty spectacular number.
Yeah, we're coming up against our time here, but a couple more questions. One is, I applaud you for the parental leave. I applaud you for what you're doing with people who, adopt surrogacy. I mean, that's remarkable. And not enough firms have even that, the basic level of humanity around employees who become parents. However, you have an 11-year-old and a 12-and-a-half-year-old. And for someone as accomplished and smart as you are, you also have a bulldog, which blows my mind because those dogs go to the vet all the time.
True.
It's a journey. I've got a 6-year-old, an 11-year-old, a 14-year-old. It's a journey. And it's not like, okay, parental leave's over. This thing just is going to run itself. Things come up with kids and not, always, you can plan for the field trip. Okay, I'm going to go chaperone the field trip. Well, that's 2 months down the road. We've advocated for something that the company does for companies to adopt what we call care days, which is different from a sick day, different from a personal day, obviously different from a vacation day. It allows you to be honest with why you're suddenly not there. How do you sort of help your employees, your tens of thousands of employees, when these emergencies come up? It's obviously one thing. My kid fell off her bike. She broke her leg. Oh, we'll go do that. But there are other things. There's the emotional part. My teenager's having a really tough time at school. I need to leave early to take her out for ice cream. How do you work that into the culture of the firm and allow people to still work at a very high level, which needs to be done, but also tend to those sort of care emergencies that crop up?
Yeah, well, I have to say, Paul, I'm probably needing more protected time to run my bulldog back and forth to the vet than I may for my children. But besides that, I understand and appreciate the point and where you're going with the question. We have what we refer to as candid conversation series, where we create these spaces for people to come together, discuss perspectives, experiences, within a very candid conversation. We do a lot of listening to each other. We learn from one another, so that we can better understand the lived experiences of people we work with every day. So these types of conversations happen at the national level, at the local office level, within our inclusion networks that I mentioned, very grassroots ways at times. We've even had our chairman talk openly on a town hall about some of his own family circumstances and when he's needed to take some time away. And it just gives this tone of permission and understanding that we are human beings who come together to do the work that we do at a place called PwC. And we are human beings that have lives outside of the work that we are doing as well. So again, I think we try to really listen to what our people need. It goes back to our culture of flexibility. It goes back to asking for what you need. The team planning helps a lot. What we've sometimes seen teams do is at the beginning of an engagement, talk about their goals, not only on the project, of course, but on their well-being goals as well. Or maybe it is in their community service goals. We value a lot of that type of outside of work give back so that we can be contributing members of our communities as well. We know people, their purpose is fueled in many different ways. And so again, that's just another example of valuing that protected time as branded as important by me, the individual, and has to be understood by my team. Now we have to be able to understand, well, if I'm going to be out this day at that time and you're going to be gone this day at that time because you want to take your kid for an ice cream, or, maybe there's some therapy sessions that you're accompanying your child to, or that you're going to for yourself. The openness in which we have brought that forward. And again, I'm talking about the well-being, but we've also had a lot of this come through in our diversity, equity, and inclusion. We want PwC to be a safe space to talk about things that are going on in our lives so that we can become that support for each other. And again, really live out that value of care. So I would tell you, a lot of people do have those very specific conversations. I'm going to log out for the next 90 minutes because I need to go pick up my child, take them for an ice cream, and I'm going to be back on at 4:30 to review this deliverable, and I'll have something back to you by 5 or whatever. That type of communication is really something we're trying to showcase. Firm leaders sharing, showcase our people sharing, so that again, we really provide that space for people to authentically share who they are, how they feel, so that we're strengthening that culture of belonging. And when we do that, it it does require a shift from awareness to empathy and an active demonstration of inclusive leadership to cultivate a greater sense of trust. And so that's, again, we really talk a lot about trust and how important that is. Doing all these different things lead us to that trusting space where we're just all better together.
Deanne, awesome. Thank you for being my guest on the Company of Dads podcast. Final question, since there is a part of PwC that is consultants. Yes. When you somebody listened to this and they're like, okay, great, PwC figured this out. How do I even start this at my firm? What would you say? Like, if they want to start a well-being program, what are the low-hanging fruit, 1, 2, 3 that they could do to get something off the ground that would be meaningful?
Yeah. And I do want to say, Paul, we've done a lot of tremendous things, but we are still on a journey. I don't think we have everything figured out, and we will continue to listen to our people and clients, and so that we can understand what else we could be doing. What would be an even better if? So we're always listening for that as well. But I am very proud of where we've been, where we're going, and the type of support and culture that we've built for our people. I would say if you're just starting out and you're looking to start somewhere, start small, but start. Don't wait until you have this ideal solution. Ask your people, what is it that would be most helpful for you? Make sure you're talking about a well-being strategy interlinked with the business strategy. This doesn't work when it feels like an add-on, bolt-on, kind of ad hoc program that sits off to the side. When we talk about well-being, it is foundational to who we are as an organization, much like our deep sense of purpose and who we believe we are and the values that we have as an organization. We talk about those in the same way. So you have to have that tone at the top. You have to have that leadership buy-in. Rarely do things happen without leaders being bought in and ready to invest in the idea and the go-forward plan. You have to understand from more of the grassroots levels what's important, what do people want. You can't design solutions in an ivory tower that, again, aren't going to be considered benefits or important to the people that they are meant to serve and support. So the leadership buy-in, talking and listening to your people, understanding what they need, and then just start experimenting with things. Pilot. We run a lot of pilots, a lot of experiments with different tools, techs, apps, different technologies. So again, we've gone through a lot to get to where we are, but it's because we've been willing to experiment early and often based on the feedback from our people.
That's great advice. Thank you again, Deanne. I really appreciate you having joined me today.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you for listening to the Company of Dads podcast. I also want to thank the people who make this podcast and everything else that we do with the Company of Dads possible. Helder Mira, who is our audio producer. Lindsay Decker, who handles all of our social media. Terry Brennan, who's helping us with the newsletter and audience acquisition. Emily Servin, who is our web maestro. And of course, Evan Roosevelt, who is working side by side with me in many of the things that we do here at the Company of Dads. It's a great team, and we're just trying to bring you the best in fatherhood. Remember, the one-stop shop for everything is our newsletter, The Dad. Sign up at thecompanyofdads.com/thedad. Thank you again for listening.